Happy Christmas. Feliz Navidad. There's lots of ways of putting it. Today is a day of great joy. And for me, my all-time favourite, how can one say that? How can one say that there is one verse that is the verse, because so many verses speak to us. I'm always saying it on my thought for the day. I'm always saying, oh, this is a wonderful verse. This is a wonderful verse. But I think of all the verses in Scripture, the most profound verse is contained in John's Gospel, John's wonderful description of who Jesus really is. The other Gospels had written about the natural birth of Jesus, or the supernatural birth of Jesus, how it had come about, how the angels had visited, how the shepherds and the wise men had come, how it had all come about, how Joseph had been told about it, all the details in Matthew and in Luke. Of course, Mark doesn't contain any of the stories about the birth of Jesus. And John, who knew Jesus so very, very well, John was one of the inner three, Peter, James and John, that were often called upon by Jesus to go to sensitive places or go with him as a small group for a particular purpose. John was the one who leaned on the chest of Jesus, leaned on him at the Last Supper. John, the confidant of Jesus. He knew Jesus in the flesh extremely well. But he knew when the resurrection happened, he knew that Jesus was not just a human, a nice, wonderful, caring, miracle-working, amazing human being. And he describes it in John chapter 1. And this profound verse is the verse that I think is the most amazing verse. It's only a few words, but it is so incredible. Having described the Word that was in the beginning, through whom everything was made and who was involved in the making of everything, that this very expression of God, the Word that was life and light, in verse 14 of John's Gospel, chapter 1, the Word became flesh and lived among us. The Word became flesh and lived among us. That is the mystery of Christmas. That is the truth upon which the whole Gospel rests. Because if Jesus had not been God himself, come into the flesh, he could not have saved anyone. He couldn't have been the atonement for every person. He couldn't have been the seal of the new covenant. He couldn't have been who he had to be, who he was. He would have been just a nice man, just a prophet, bit delusional, had delusions of grandeur, claiming that if people had seen him, they'd seen the Father. No, he was far more than that, and is far more than that. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. We have beheld his glory, the glory as of the only Son from the Father. This is the great mystery of Christmas, that baby held the God of glory, the eternal God, within his flesh, that Mary and Joseph raised God through his childhood. What an amazing thing. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, lived among us. And we beheld his glory, full of grace and truth. That's what John wrote, that he saw and was privileged to actually experience the living Christ, the living Jesus, the anointed one, walking with him, talking with him, sitting at table with him. I don't want to say anything more, really. I hope that you will think today and ponder the amazing thing that God did for us. It was a high price, an enormously high price to pay for our redemption, to send his own Son into this world, to be rejected by most of the people that he met, or many of the people that he met, and in the end to be rejected by his own people. But the Word became flesh. I want to read, I hope you don't mind, but I had a period in my life when God inspired me to write some poetry. It's not something I've ever really done a lot of, but I wrote this Christmas poem, and I'd like to read it for you as part of this thought for the day. It's called Love Appeared. Love did once in flesh appear, to banish death and conquer fear. Hidden in a baby boy, the angels sang to tell of joy given to men so long ago, to show to all who live below. Love in heaven loves them so. Love in heaven loves them so. Truth came down and walked the earth, to clearly show we need new birth. He, the Father's spoken word, now in flesh is plainly heard. Life eternal, held in time, he tasted death that should be mine. Love himself became the way. Love himself became the way. Light became a man that day, the dark defeated by the way. Glory shining in his face, men remarked upon his grace. Son of God is Son of Man, so perfectly completes the plan. Here's the path that leads us home. Here's the path that leads us home. My hope and prayer this Christmas time is that each and every one of you listening to me today, and all those you know and love, will realise who Jesus really is and come to him for salvation, because that's why he came. Have a great Christmas. God bless you. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.